However, the New Testament and the histories of Josephus each imply that the Messiah was not this nationalist leader who had been foreseen, but rather a pacifist who encouraged cooperation with Rome. For example, consider Jesus' instruction in Matthew chapter 5 verse 41, when anyone conscripts you for 1 mile, go along 2. Roman military law permitted its soldiers to conscript, which is to demand that civilians carry their 65-pound packs for a length of 1 mile. Roman roads had mile markers, milestones, so that there would be no dispute over whether or not this requirement had been met. Why would the Messiah, foreseen by Judaism's xenophobic world ruler prophecies, urge Jews to go the extra mile for the Roman army? When one compares the militaristic Messiah described in the Dead Sea Scrolls and other early Judaic literature with the pacifistic Messiah described in the New Testament and Josephus' Testimonium, one aspect of the lost history of Judea seems visible. An intellectual battle was waged over the nature of the Messiah. The New Testament and Josephus stood together on one side of this struggle, claiming that a pacifistic Messiah had appeared who advocated cooperation with Rome. On the other side of this theological divide stood the Jewish zealots who awaited a militaristic Messiah to lead them against Rome. Among Christianity's oldest surviving records is the Epistle of Clement to the Corinthians, dated in 96 Common Era. The letter was purportedly written by Pope Clement I to a congregation of Christians who had apparently rebelled against the church's authority. It shows that even at the onset of the religion, the Bishop of Rome was able to give orders to the Church of Corinth, and that the Church of Rome used the Roman army as an example of the kind of discipline and obedience that it expected from other churches and their members. The Church of God which sojourneth in Rome to the Church of God which sojourneth in Corinth. Let us mark the soldiers that are enlisted under our rulers, how exactly, how readily, how submissively they execute the orders given them. All are not prefects, nor rulers of thousands, nor rulers of hundreds, nor rulers of fifties, and so forth. But each man in his own rank executeth the orders given by the king and the governors. 1 Clement chapter 37, verse 2 through 3. But how did the church's authority structure come into existence resembling the Roman military? Who established it? And who gave the bishops such absolute control? Cyprian wrote, "The bishop is in the church, and the church is in the bishop. And if anyone is not with the bishop, that person is not in the church." And why was Rome, supposedly the center of Christian persecution, chosen as the church's headquarters? A Roman origin would explain why the Bishop of Rome was later made the supreme pontiff of the church and why Rome became its headquarters. It would explain how a Judean cult eventually became the state religion of the Roman Empire. A Roman origin would also explain why so many members of a Roman imperial family, the Flavians, were recorded as being among the first Christians. The Flavians would have been among the first Christians because, having invented the religion, they were in fact the first Christians. When considering a Flavian invention of Christianity, one should bear in mind that the Flavian emperors were considered to be divine and often created religions. The oath that they swore when being ordained emperor began with the instruction that they would do all things divine. in the interests of the empire. The Arch of Titus, which commemorates Titus' destruction of Jerusalem, is inscribed with the following statement: Senatus Populus K. Romanus, Divo Tito Divi Vespasiani August. The Senate and people of Rome to the divine Titus, son of the divine Vespasian. Fragments of the written pronouncement given in 69 Common Era by the prefect of Egypt Tiberius Alexander, in which he recognized Vespasian as the new emperor, are still in existence. Vespasian is referred to in them as the divine Caesar and Lord. Josephus also believed that Vespasian was a divine person. He claimed that Judaism's messianic prophecies foretold that Vespasian would become the Lord of all mankind. This indicates that in the eyes of Josephus, Vespasian was not only the Jesus or Savior of Judea, but that he was also the Christ, the Greek word for the Messiah, that was foreseen in the prophecies of a Judaic world leader. Thou, O Vespasian, thinkest no more than that thou hast taken Josephus himself captive, but I come to thee as a messenger of greater tidings. For had I not been sent by God to thee, thou, O Vespasian, art Caesar and emperor, thou and this thy son, bind me now still faster, and keep me for thyself. For thou, O Caesar, art not only Lord over me, but over the land and the sea and all mankind. Josephus, in proclaiming himself God's minister, also described an ending of God's contract with Judaism that was quite similar to the position that the New Testament takes concerning Christianity. The only difference being that Josephus believed that God's good fortune had gone over not to Christianity, but to Rome and its imperial family, the Flavians. Since it pleaseth thee, who hast created the Jewish nation to oppress the same, and since all their good fortune is gone over to the Romans, and since thou hast made choice of this soul of mine to foretell what is to come to pass hereafter, I willingly give them my hands, and am content to live. And I protest openly that I do not go over to the Romans as a deserter of the Jews, but as a minister from thee. Scholars have dismissed Josephus' application of Judaism's messianic prophecies to Caesar as simple flattery. I disagree, and shall show that not only did Josephus believe Vespasian to be God, and Titus, therefore, the Son of God, but that his histories were entirely constructed to demonstrate that very fact. There was nothing unusual in Josephus' recognition of Vespasian as a god. The Flavians merely continued the tradition of establishing emperors as gods. That the Julio-Claudian line of Roman emperors had begun. Julius Caesar, the first deus divine of that line, claimed to have been descended from Venus. The Roman Senate is said to have decreed that he was a god because a comet appeared shortly after his death, and thus demonstrating his divinity. In 80 Common Era, Titus established an imperial cult for his father, who had passed away during the previous year. The cult was politically important to Titus because Vespasian's deification would break the Julio-Claudian line of divine succession and thereby secure the throne for the Flavians.